Singapore and Thailand, beloved as premier tourist destinations, have always drawn travelers from across the globe. But in 1995, a series of 3 gruesome murders cast a dark shadow over these vacation paradises. The nightmare began when a pair of human legs was discovered in Singapore's harbour waters. Soon after, 2 human skulls were excavated from a public park in Thailand. What made these discoveries particularly horrifying was that all victims were identified as tourists who had just begun their holidays, and the brutal killer was committing murders while traveling between destinations. In March 1995, workers at Singapore's Clifford Pier made a grisly discovery: scattered human remains floating in the nearby waters. The most chilling find came on March 13, a pair of fully intact human legs. That day, during routine cleanup operations, workers hauled up a tightly sealed, bulging black plastic bag. Driven by morbid curiosity, they peeled it open, only to recoil at the stench of decomposing flesh. Inside lay the severed lower legs of a Caucasian male, already in an advanced state of decay. Singapore police immediately launched a marine recovery operation across the harbour. Over the following days, divers retrieved more nightmare fragments, the victim's torso and thighs, each discovery more unsettling than the last. Forensic examination of the reassembled remains revealed the victim to be a moderately built Caucasian male in good health with no major medical conditions. The legs discovered on the 13th had been cleanly severed at the knees with precise professional cuts, leading investigators to believe the killer likely had professional knife skills, possibly working as a surgeon, veterinarian, or butcher. However, identifying the victim proved challenging. With only partial remains recovered and Singapore's predominantly Asian population, authorities concluded the victim was most likely a tourist. Given Singapore's status as a major tourist destination with massive daily visitor numbers, this significantly complicated the investigation. Just as Singapore police were struggling with the extensive tourist list, unsure where to begin, a missing person fax from South Africa brought a breakthrough in the case. The fax was sent by the family of a man named Gerard Lowe, a 33-year-old married white mechanical engineer at a South African brewery. He had arrived in Singapore on March 8, 1995, for a planned 3-day trip. However, when the 3 days passed with no sign of his return, and all attempts to contact him failed, his family had no choice but to send the missing person report to Singapore police. Upon learning of Gerard's disappearance, investigators immediately recalled the human remains recovered from the pier. Authorities quickly conducted DNA testing, and the results confirmed that the body parts found in the harbour were indeed those of Gerard Lowe, missing for days. Police then investigated Gerard's final movements and discovered he was last seen on surveillance footage entering room 1511 at Singapore's Harbour View Hotel with a man named Simon James. Officers immediately rushed to the hotel, only to learn Simon had already checked out. The room was now occupied by a honeymooning couple who had been staying there for several days, during which housekeeping had cleaned the room multiple times. A thorough forensic examination revealed tiny, overlooked blood spatter traces in hard-to-clean areas beneath the bedroom desk edges and inside the bathtub. These dried micro-blood stains missed during cleaning were collected and tested against Gerard's DNA. The results confirmed the blood matched Gerard's, placing him at the crime scene. The hotel receptionist informed police that Simon had separately approached the front desk, demanding to remove Gerard's registration information. Simon claimed Gerard was homosexual and had harassed him during the night, forcing him to eject Gerard from the room. However, police examination of hotel surveillance footage revealed no record of Gerard ever leaving the premises. Hotel staff further disclosed that on March 11, Simon was observed leaving the hotel carrying a travel bag, which was conspicuously absent upon his return. Based on these findings, investigators concluded that the hotel room shared by Gerard and Simon constituted the primary crime scene. Simon, as the last person seen with Gerard, was now the prime suspect. Authorities promptly issued an arrest warrant for Simon, while intensifying efforts to recover Gerard's remaining body parts. Despite exhaustive searches, the victim's head and arms were never located. Forensic analysis of recovered limbs showed no fatal injuries, leading pathologists to determine the killing blow was likely delivered to the head, suggesting the perpetrator deliberately concealed the most identifiable and evidentiary, rich body parts. This modus operandi, the calculated disposal of victim remains and removal of identifiable features, exhibited characteristics consistent with serial offenders. Police assessed Simon as highly dangerous and likely to re-offend, making his immediate apprehension imperative. Despite an extensive manhunt by Singaporean authorities, Simon seemed to have vanished without a trace, disappearing completely from sight. When repeated searches yielded no results, Singapore police contacted the British Embassy, given Simon's claimed nationality. A thorough verification by embassy officials uncovered the disturbing truth: Simon James was merely an alias. The killer's real identity was John Martin. British records painted a troubling portrait of the fugitive. Born in England in 1959, John's troubled path began early when he dropped out of school at 15 due to dyslexia. His teenage years quickly spiraled into delinquency, marked by repeated arrests for theft and robbery that landed him in juvenile detention centers. As an adult, John never abandoned his criminal ways, but discovered a new passion: travel. He funded his wanderlust through petty theft, moving from city to city after each score. This transient lifestyle eventually led him to Mexico, where he met and married a local woman. But marriage couldn't reform him. When his wife discovered his continued stealing, she left him. After his divorce, John was arrested again for trafficking contraband. Given the severity and scale of the offense, the court sentenced him to 7 years in prison. An attempted prison break later added 6 more years to his term. During his incarceration, John was assigned to work as a cook in the prison kitchen, where his duties included slaughtering livestock. It was here that he secretly honed his skills in dismembering bodies. By October 1993, due to good behavior, John was classified as a low-risk inmate and granted relaxed supervision. Seizing the opportunity, he successfully escaped, this time for good. Using his forged identity as Simon James, he fled the UK and made his way to Singapore, where he would eventually commit this horrific crime. Armed with the killer's true identity, Singapore police swiftly checked John's immigration records, only to discover he had already left the country on March 14th. The investigation hit a dead end as the perpetrator had fled, but authorities refused to give up, maintaining surveillance at the airport for his possible return. On March 19th, 1995, John entered Singapore, unaware that police were waiting. The moment he stepped off the plane, officers arrested him. A search of his luggage uncovered Gerard's stolen belongings and John's murder tools. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, John grew agitated and attempted suicide, but officers intervened just in time. Investigators soon made a chilling discovery: John had arrived from Thailand. That same day, a dog walker in Phuket had stumbled upon 2 human skulls unearthed by their pet. Thai police would later confirm John was responsible for those killings as well. With his capture, the horrifying truth behind all 3 murders finally came to light. Let us rewind to March 8, 1995. John arrived in Singapore from Britain, his luggage containing handcuffs, a Swiss Army knife, and other sinister tools. At the airport, he began hunting for prey and found Gerard Lowe. Posing as a conscious traveler, John struck up a conversation with the newly arrived tourist. When he learned Gerard planned to purchase appliances during his trip, John saw $signs this tourist would be carrying substantial cash. Cunningly, John reinvented himself as a Mexican businessman with local expertise. "I know all the best electronic shops," he lied, even buying Gerard breakfast to build trust. Charmed by John's friendly demeanor and reassured by their shared whiteness and English language, Gerard agreed to share accommodation at Harbourview Hotel to save costs. Their partnership turned fatal mere hours after check-in. When Gerard's back was turned, John tasered him unconscious before crushing his skull with a hammer. The killer then dragged the body to the bathroom, turning on the shower to mask his gruesome work. Drawing on his prison kitchen experience, John dismembered Gerard's body with chilling efficiency, his Swiss Army knife making quick work of flesh and bone in just 40 minutes. He wrapped the butchered remains in black plastic bags, hiding them in the hotel wardrobe while pillaging Gerard's credit cards and traveler's checks, forging signatures with his Simon James alias. For days, John lived lavishly on his victim's money while Gerard's remains putrefied unseen. When the stench became unbearable, he packed the decomposing parcels into a travel bag, dumping them in a nearby river before immediately booking a flight to Thailand for new crimes. March 15, 1995. Thailand. John employed the same method at Thailand's airport, approaching a vulnerable white mother and son, Sheila, a woman in her 50s, and Darren, whose left leg was in a cast. Seeing them as easy targets, John offered to help with their luggage. Unaware of his true intentions, they accepted his company and shared a taxi to their hotel, where they checked into room 43 while John deliberately took room 48 across the hall. That evening, Sheila invited John to dinner, but he declined, claiming exhaustion from travel. In reality, he was preparing for his crime, renting a scooter in Phuket's tourist district and gathering large cardboard boxes for later use. At 8 a.m. the next morning, John knocked on their door. Sheila answered while Darren sat on the balcony, admiring the sea view. John feigned interest in the scenery, claiming his own room lacked a balcony. Once close enough, he stunned Darren with a taser. Sheila screamed in horror, but John assured her he only wanted money. Threatening Darren's life, he ordered her to check out, promising to release them once paid. Terrified, Sheila complied. In truth, John never intended to let them live. While Sheila was downstairs, he killed Darren on the balcony. When she returned, he murdered her before she could see her son one last time. With practiced efficiency, he dragged both bodies into the bathroom. Drawing from his prior experience dismembering Gerard, he finished within 50 minutes. After looting their valuables and forging signatures on their credit cards and checks, he transported the remains in the boxes he had prepared, loading them onto his rented scooter and scattering the body parts across Phuket. Finally, he buried the victims' heads in a local park. Since Singapore police had kept Gerard's case under wraps to prevent public panic, John remained unaware he'd been exposed. Moreover, Phuket's underdeveloped commercial infrastructure left him unable to spend the substantial sum stolen from Sheila and Darren. This ultimately drove his decision to return to Singapore. After the discovery of the victims' skulls, Thai authorities fully reconstructed the crime sequence. Through coordinated intelligence sharing with Singaporean police, jurisdiction over the case was formally transferred to Singapore for consolidated prosecution. In September 1995, Singapore authorities brought John to trial with conclusive evidence. Faced with overwhelming proof, John stubbornly denied his crimes, fabricating excuses to conceal his true motive of financial gain. He claimed Gerard had made homosexual advances, forcing him to kill in self-defense, and that a British gang leader had promised to dispose of the body. He insisted the Thailand murders were also framed by this gang. Of course, no such gangster existed. These were desperate lies concocted under the shadow of execution, easily dismantled under scrutiny. The Singapore jury saw through his deceit. On April 19, 1996, John was sentenced to death by hanging, the maximum penalty under Singapore law. Bound and blindfolded, he was led to the gallows where his neck was broken by the fall. Yet the case did not truly end there. After his execution, 3 or 4 additional potential victims were discovered in other countries. But with insufficient evidence and the perpetrator already executed, these cases could never be conclusively linked to John. After brutally taking lives, John met his deserved fate on the gallows. But the victims, forever lost, left only grief and regret for their families. May they rest in peace. These tragedies serve as a grim reminder. When traveling, remain wary of those who seem overly friendly, for behind their kind facade may lurk a heart of darkness. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this case, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow Case Diaries. There are plenty more cases coming your way. Got thoughts on today's story? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. See you in the next one.